Welcome, race fans, and welcome to the Sports Magazine, the Auto Racing Edition for July. With us is Dave Sully from Area Auto Racing News, Scott Wylie, he drives a modified in the Race of Champions, and we're going to turn it over to Dave.
Scott, we're very fortunate to have you here because there's a lot of things that you know about what's going on in racing that we don't know, and our main purpose here is to enlighten the public. But the first thing we want to do is get into your career. You are actually one of the guys in it's a vanishing breed, a family of racers. The only one I think right now that I can think of that where there's an actual family is the Catalanos, and they're a gang. They got quite a few, but you've got you and you've got Jake and you've got your mother and your father. We're all involved in it. So just as a kind of an intro, tell us how this all got started as far as you're concerned, and where were you when your father was racing and father and mother were racing?
Well, it actually got started back in the late 50s with my grandfather, Pops Wylie. He used to race at Civic Stadium back in the day in the rock pile, and was one of the very first racers at Holland Speedway and Johnny Speedway and all of those. So my dad got into it from that. Met my mother, who also raced at Perry and Holland, was a champion herself in the Super Stock Surcharger division, it was called back then. So, Jake and I grew up into it. We kind of had no choice. We were racers by default, I guess you could say. But, my father never put any pressure on me to race. It was more, I was involved in a lot of different sports. I loved going and watching him. He was very successful, obviously, and a legend at Holland Speedway. So it was a lot of fun growing up and watching him win. And, around the time I was 16 or 17 is when I started to get pretty interested in it and going in the pits with him. And then about 2001, I tested a Cup Light for Paul Graff, who was actually going to buy a late model for my father. But my dad's health, just wouldn't allow him to race. He didn't want Paul to spend that kind of money on a new team and not be able to race for him. So Paul gave me an opportunity in the Cup Light, and it kind of just went from there. We were pretty successful out of the box with that. I raced for Paul for a few years, won a championship with him in the Cup Light division, and then we bought our own car, raced with that for a while. And then that moved me up when I got hooked up with Ed Walzak, and we moved into a late model. And just kind of kept the ball rolling. Jake, in the meantime, they were building a super stock for my younger brother Jake, who would always help me. So it was cool to see him, get an opportunity to share the limelight, I guess you could say, and get his own shot at racing, which obviously he's been very successful as well in the super stock division. So it's something we love to do. It was in our blood. We're passionate about it. I'm pretty fortunate to be able to get to do what I love, and now I've made a business of it. So,
tell me a little bit about the Cup Lights. We were around when that came in, and it was a very interesting class, and it was. What is it? Was it an 8th scale? I'm trying to remember what it was.
They were 3/4 scale NASCAR car. Had a snowmobile engine in it. All the same suspension as a late model did, with the Panhard bar and A-frames and sway bars, and they were very cool cars actually. And it was a nice stepping stone, and a little bit different than the TQs or a Legend car, where there was a little bit more suspension to work with. And I thought you could take a little bit more from those and move up the classes, which is what we did eventually, going to the late models. And then I raced up in Canada for a little bit after we left Lake Erie Speedway. And raced late models up there, and then eventually got back hooked up with Paul Graff after many years apart, and raced a sport mod for him, and then that eventually led me to where I am now, racing for Booker Motorsports, or Frank and Patty Booker, and Billy Putney, who helped put the deal together with us, and who manages the team now.
So it was almost meant to be. But the important thing along there, and I hope the people caught that, was he was not arm twisted into doing this. This was a case where if you're around that environment, it either sticks or it doesn't. And in this case, it did, which was good. And now, as you say, you're making a living at it. And this is another thing where most racers don't. They maybe they work on them in their shop, or they'll bring their gear to whoever the car is and drive it. But this is your business. What actually do you do?
Yeah, so I was working in Canada for quite a while, working with Sean McWhirter and Streamline chassis up there, and we started building late model chassis and super stock chassis. Had a lot of success. Unfortunately, it got to the point where I was too big I had to get a work visa to work over there, and they turned me around one day when I went to go into Canada and work up there. So I kind of started my own deal here in April of last year, and I know we'll touch a little bit more on that stuff later, but started that, and I really wanted to gear it towards street stocks and super stocks because I really felt like there was a big market for those around here, and nobody really catered to them. A lot of the parts that you used to be able to get in a junkyard and run on the cars, you now had to get out of catalogs, and I thought if I stocked some of that stuff and we're able to do chassis work and do fabrication work, I thought it would be, a good idea since there really wasn't anything for asphalt racing locally, and Bicknell isn't it a little bit as far as parts are concerned, but not really on the fabrication side of things, and they cater more to dirt guys, which is understandable. So, and we've had a lot of success with the super stocks. My dad was building them back when he was 15 years old and all the way up through, and then when Jake got into it, he was extremely successful right off the bat, and we were pretty dominant there for a couple years with him. So I thought, we would take what we learned and make some money on it, and it's gone very well. We've been able to put together some other tire deals along the way and be, tire suppliers for a couple different series now with the TQ Midgets and the ROC Street Stocks, and it's just growing. And I'm very appreciative of everybody in the racing community that's come with us and uses us, and it's awesome to get paid to do what you love. So.
Yeah, a labor of love. Now, having said that, do you cater totally to asphalt, or do you do any dirt work?
No, I actually do have some dirt work. I've done some stuff a little bit with like Corey Sawyer over at Ransomville, and okay. I know Krista Zamba's come to us for some stuff. So, we're branching out a little bit. We were the parts truck at Ransomville last year, and we were just kind of getting our feet wet and everything, and I just thought it would be a good idea to get our name out there to more than just asphalt guys. And we've had some people come over. The tough part about that is Ransomville's so close to Bicknell that, a lot of the guys from up there go to there, which is understandable. So, but we're dealers for Bicknell and some other companies as well. And we do more than just super stocks and street stocks also. I mean, we have stuff for modifieds and all different stuff. So, it's been great. It's really taken off.
Is this recent merger between Troyer and Fuller, is that a good thing for you or no? And by the way, tell the people what that merger meant.
Yeah, basically, LFR and Fuller and Troyer kind of merged together to form one bigger company. LFR, wanted more of the manufacturing side of things to keep up. They were better at parts. It sounds like they're trying, now the parts that we were getting in Rochester, we now have to get from Massachusetts or other dealers for them, which is a little frustrating, because I think there is an opportunity to be good for companies like myself or even Bicknell, or because I think that it's going to drive costs up at some point. Hopefully it doesn't, but that's yet to be seen, I guess you could say. But I think it does open up the market to do some more fabrication work, like Kloof does, and myself, and supplying parts that people use a lot that are more from this area, so that we don't have to ship everything here that we used to normally get from Rochester. That wasn't that hard to get, that they could bring to the tracks to us, or however you got it. But it was definitely easier. It's yet to be seen. Hopefully it's a good thing. Hopefully it doesn't drive costs up, and we'll see how it goes. My
first thought when I heard about that is it sounded too good to be true. And as soon as you create, which essentially is a monopoly, except for that one chassis builder down south that builds modified.
Fury.
He said, "To heck with you guys. Yeah. All right, you're going to do that. It's going to help us."
Which Fury was an extension of LFR. It's all pretty confusing.
Yeah.
And kind of soap opera-ish at the time with everything that was going on. But hopefully they get it straightened out. But yeah, it pretty much is a monopoly now. So I think it does open up the door for some smaller companies to take advantage of that for sure.
Now, having said that, you can build all the cars you want, but if there aren't any tracks around to run them on, the whole point is moot. We were at a point where there were going to be 0 for 2. Now we're 1 for 2. Where are we with that? What is your feeling about the situation at Lancaster? The way that all the players.
Yeah.
How did you see it coming about?
I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. I mean, everybody was kind of scratching their heads for a while with everything that happened at Holland, and again, I know we'll touch on that a little bit later. But
right.
Lancaster, I'm glad that racers bought it. I don't care if they're drag racers or oval track racers or whoever they are. I'm glad that they bought it. I'm glad that they're going to put the investment in it to keep the infrastructure of the facility intact and improve it. So I think it'll be good. I think everyone needs to just get through this year. It's an awkward year for Western New York racing. We've never seen anything like this, where you had so many tracks open. Now we have barely any. So I'm glad to see that the new owners at Lancaster took over and they're putting the effort in. I'm glad that Joe Skotnicki and the ROC are around to help with that, because I think if it wasn't for them, with the new owners at Lancaster being drag racing guys, it'd be hard for them to kind of come in and just put an operation together. I mean, Joe's got a pretty good operation, very well run, organized. So I think that's been very helpful for the short term and hopefully the long term. I think the days of 16 to 18 races in asphalt racing at a weekly program are like it was in the 90s and early 2000s are gone. I don't know that it's viable. I don't know if they can make it work. I think you need something like the ROC, to come in and put a handful of races together at each track, and they're big races. The way they mix up the classes are nice. You don't have 12 different classes running on the same night of all these cars that are similar that they've done in the past, and I think that it's beneficial to have somebody like Joe around to really keep everything organized and under one sanctioning body and the same rules and all that stuff. And that's where we were talking on the way up here about the difference between dirt and asphalt. You can run the same rules in dirt from here to California, and then you go 20 minutes down the road in an asphalt track and you got to change half your car, and it costs money every time you do that. And that's one of the biggest differences between dirt and asphalt that I think that we need to close the gap on. And I think it comes in the form of something like the ROC, where you have one sanctioning body with the same kind of rules.
And I agree totally. We've gone around with this for years on this show, and the big frustration we have is that you can load a late model anywhere from here to California, dirt late model, and all you change a couple of minor changes, and yet each track, and Holland was guilty of this a few years back, and it was very frustrating because it was done intentionally by the former ownership, that he wanted to make sure that the cars stayed where they were, so he made it so that it would cost you an arm and a leg to just go over there on a Saturday night. Having said that, now that we have these guys in place, and you're right about Joe with ROC, I mean, he had the infrastructure, he had the staff, he had everybody that he could plug in. My understanding that there were some other guys who wanted to do it, but at short notice for Vito and Mickey, you got to take somebody who's and Joe is. And the irony of it was, he was dancing on a tightrope all that time, and he finally, what was it, a week before the sale, he put out the schedule, and all the races were at Spencer. Yeah. And by the way, you would know this too, what the heck happened at Spencer? All of a sudden, they're hanging out the closed sign.
Yeah, I'm not very, overly familiar with, out at Spencer and Chemung. I know John White had owned, both tracks, and knew people, the Hodge families over at Chemung, and, thankfully, they were almost closed too. I mean, you almost had Spencer, Chemung, Lancaster, and Holland all out in the same year. I mean, that's just crazy. But thankfully, they've stepped up. Thankfully, Jeff DeMink and Joe have put together a program at Spencer to keep that going, in hopes that can continue with a more bright future. As all these tracks are. I mean, it's just, there's so much history and legacy there, and the sport of racing is in questionable times, I guess you could say, from the top down. But dirt's making it work, and I think asphalt can too. It just it needs a change. You had the same families and the same people owning a lot of the same tracks for many years, and sometimes you need to mix it up a little bit. And hopefully this either opened eyes to that it could all go away in a snap of the fingers, or that just some new blood get in there, new ideas, and mix it up, and hopefully revive everything.
The sport itself is now competing for the entertainment dollar. It wasn't before. It was the place to go. It was the thing to do on a Friday or a Saturday. Ransomville can still do that, because in Ransomville they've got a niche audience that's built in, and you don't have to drive 50 miles to get to it. You drive down the road, you go, and that's what they automatically do. But racing as an entity is now finding, and I could be wrong. I've been wrong before, but I think that the downturn at NASCAR has had a lot to do with this. Not that they have any direct connection, but because NASCAR has become, and I won't say passé, but it's getting there. If you look at the cameras at these races and see nobody in attendance and hear all of the sob stories, and what it becomes, it kind of becomes a mental thing where nobody goes to racing anymore, and that has to leak down on the local level. Or don't you? Or do you think that it should have worked the other way?
No, I agree to a point. I mean, I said this a few years ago. I mean, NASCAR, it's like the black hole effect, I called it, because NASCAR got too big for itself. I mean, they were in a point in the 90s, late 90s, even the late 80s up through the 90s, early 2000s, and Holland and all the local tracks were thriving also. There were so many cars to go around, and NASCAR was so big, and it was getting the popularity and guys from the NFL and Joe Gibbs and everyone, attached to the sport, and it got such glamour and spotlight. It got too big for itself, and they just thought they could do no wrong. Well, eventually that wore off, and in this day and age, there's just so much more to do. Kids have so many more options to do. Social media has opened up everything, in my opinion, and the kids, unless you're part of a family like the Scoras or Catalanos or even, Feeblecorn and us, and, that were brought up at the racetrack, there's not a lot of new people coming into the racetrack. And that's where I think, as a series or a track, they got to focus on making it cost effective to get in and making the ladder to the upper series make sense. And you be able to take something with you along the way. Back in the old days, you went from a street stock to a Charger, you could take some of that stuff with you. You went from the Charger, it was the same motor that used to go into the modified, and you could take stuff along the way with you, and it made it easier to make that jump. Now there's such a gap from a cost perspective between series and the lower series to the upper series, without a big jump in the purse, for what back in the day in the 70s, 80s, 90s, what you were spending. It was still going up over those years, but now it's astronomical what you spend in parts, where you could used to go get them from the junkyard, and the purse really hasn't gone up that much. I mean, again, back to Joe and the ROC, I think they do a pretty good job of their purse, as best they can for the classes and supporting all the classes. Obviously we'd all like to see more, but that comes with sponsorship and putting together a good program and, something that people want to sponsor. But, hopefully it will get to a point where the downturn levels out and it'll turn back up, whether it be NASCAR or even, at the local side of the asphalt things. And, I think dirt's pretty healthy, but, hopefully the asphalt can take some notes on some of that stuff and get it back. You're never gonna. I don't think you'll ever get back to the '90s at Holland, where there's, you have to get there. My mom and Marie Fallon would get there at 1 in the afternoon just to save seats, and then have to go sit in the parking lot for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Just so they had a place to sit. I think those days are gone. But I still think you can have successful, nights at the racetrack. But a racetrack has to be more than a racetrack nowadays. It has to be an entertainment complex. You have to have more stuff to do there. These tracks that have all this land, they need to develop it into something, and you need to have other revenue streams than just the racetrack. And that's why I think you see the Crasheramas and some of this other stuff, because it does bring extra people to the track that would normally be there, and you also have another revenue stream there. So
right. And as a matter of fact, Lake Erie Speedway, who now runs two races, maybe 3 races a year, is making more money than they ever did when they ran races every week, because of the other stuff that they're running, wine tasting and concerts and whatever.
Because of the facility.
But NASCAR shows no sign of any kind of common sense. The only reason, in my view, that they're staying where they are, they're still floating, is because of that contract, that TV contract in '04. They're living on that, but they don't seem to understand that rafts of empty seats, eventually that contract's going to be over with. And they haven't shown one thing. All they have to do is say, you know what, next week, half-price tickets. They have never dropped a ticket price a dime, because their ego is too big. And then again, the talk about the stage racing that came in and all this point stuff. And I don't know about you, but my generation, I haven't found one person who likes the idea. I don't know if you do, but my feeling has always been, I've said it before, if you go to a NASCAR race, you have to have your accountant sitting next to you to figure out where your driver is. And it used to be green, checker.
Yeah.
Jackets, hats.
Yeah.
Whatever. And if your guy started 30th and finished 28th, you said, man, he had a good day. And they got rid of the personalities. They got rid of the Southeast. They got rid of Rockingham. They got rid of North Wilkesboro. They put a farm, put a track out in a tank farm in Fontana. They can't give tickets away to that. That's what you alluded to, and I agree with you. They grew too fast. They thought they were going to beat the NFL. And it didn't work, and so all this tinkering has not helped. So can the local guys, can the local people do it on their own? And I think you're right. I think just the expense of it all, and then trying to get this generation interested in something other than doing this is a hard thing. You guys, the families you mentioned, you guys are in it. Is there anybody coming up that can fill that gap?
I hope so. I mean, that's why, I try to go out and do events at schools and different stuff like that to get kids interested, because it's not, as the TV ratings drop and all that stuff, it's just not as mainstream as it used to be. I mean, I think NASCAR really has separated itself from where it came from in the grassroots, where you had guys that built cars at local tracks, or Alan Kawicki and these guys that brought their cars to race against Dale Earnhardt and Richard Petty and, Kelly Yarborough and all these guys. I mean, that's gone. I mean, it's all young kids that nobody has no clue who these kids are. You don't know where they came from, or they just had a ton of money and showed up one day, and all of a sudden, this kid's the new best thing in the world. Well, it separates your short track that you go to on Friday or Saturday or Sunday, and it really separates that from NASCAR, because you don't watch anybody coming through the ranks anymore, and there's no, when you get to, Chase Elliott and you get Blaney and some of these guys, but they came from racing families. People knew who their dads were, so they know who they are, but you get some of these other kids that come up and nobody knows who they are, and there's no following, and I think that's where the disconnect really comes for what's happening in the sport. And I think they do need to get more to short tracks. I know people have been talking about that, and they're talking about changing the schedule in 2021. But they need to get back to more short tracks. They need more excitement. Those are always the highest rated, viewed races. And they're always trying to change, but sometimes they don't need to change. The stuff they're changing isn't what they needed to change. No. Bristol didn't need to be changed, and now it's lost. I can't believe the amount of empty seats at Bristol. Martinsville's had it back a little bit with everything that happened with Kenseth and Logano back there a couple years ago, and it kind of brought some of the Martinsville stuff back. But they need more stuff. Those are always the highest rated races. That's what they need to get back to. And it's just too cookie cutter. The money took over. You can't show emotion. You can't fight. You can't do. They say have at it, but they don't let the guys fight.
No.
And I talked to, I know our family has a history of being a little wild sometimes, and sometimes we've gone too far. But I've talked to some of the places, or sanctioning bodies, and even I know I mentioned Joe and the ROC, and we've had our discussions and disagreements over some of that stuff, but. I'm not saying that there needs to be fights every week and people need to be getting hurt and all that stuff, but you need to let the racers figure it out, because they don't let anybody talk to anybody. You can't show any emotion. You can't leave your pit. You can't fight with anybody. You can't yell at anybody. And that's what made the sport what it is. That's when they were fighting in Daytona down in the infield when they wrecked in the 70s. That's what turned the sport and blew it up.
The big fight. Yeah.
And that's gone, and the emotion's gone, and then it happens on the racetrack, and then you get in trouble for that, or you're costing people money because you're wrecking race cars instead of just back in the day. You got in a fight and you threw fists a little bit and you had a beer and it was over the next week and you're friends again. And now it's just, there's more to it than that. I know there's lawsuits and people sue each other now, but
what about the analogy? Have at it.
Yeah, well, they say that, but then they don't. But then but they still then they fine you for what you say, or
well,
it's like let them,
They say have at it, but then they send the lovely Danica, they put her out there, and then they send a camera crew following her around, and she's going to go and shake her finger at somebody. There's no spontaneity. It's all choreographed, and everybody can see that. It's so phony. That one that you alluded to, the one with the Allisons, at Daytona, back when Wide World of Sports came on, the one that launched it, that was strictly emotion, it was strictly spontaneous, and it took off. But now they've taken the personalities out of things. They've taken and that's another thing really that I like about the ROC is that you guys, you have an identity. When you go by in the '88, when Patrick goes by in the '07, and Chuck, there is a reaction to that, and on the dirt level, you got this competition now on Friday nights at Ransomville with Williamson and Eric Rudolph and a couple other guys. These are the type types of things you need, and they're natural. They flow. Now, having said all of that, you mentioned social media, and for a couple years, it got to a point where the stuff that was going on that was being attributed to the some of the damaging aspects of the sport. I know Ransomville finally came out with a social media policy, and that no criticism is allowed at all. And where does that fit? You're in the social media age. Where does it fit?
Well, it's tough. I've been guilty of it myself. I've said things I shouldn't have said. I still do sometimes when you're emotional and you type at the wrong time and you're all wound up after a race. And just a couple weeks ago after Lancaster, I thought Andy Jankowiak got into me and took us out of the race, and it wasn't the case. And I had to talk to him and apologize. And it's good for the sport and it's bad for the sport. I mean, it's good that from a sponsor perspective and your fans, and to show everybody all the work that you put into it that wouldn't normally see it, or your family members, or just broaden the sport in general. It's good, but it also, everybody has an opinion. We talked about this on the way up. I mean, the grandstand racer, we call them, and they always tell you what you did from the race from the stands, or bash the track, or there's so much more that goes into it. Now that I'm a business owner, I've worked on the business side of things with the racetracks, and dabbled in that a little bit, and seen what it takes to really run the racetrack and the business side of things. And we used to always get mad when they would rain a show out, and just the other night some people were mad about raining out Lancaster. Well, all the forecasts were that it was going to rain, and when you have new ownership at Lancaster, you don't want them to take a bath in the stands and nobody to show up, and now you have a show and they just lost 10 grand. You know what I mean? That's people don't think about that. They just want to get on there and voice their opinion all the time, and they don't realize how damaging it is. I mean, I know firsthand there was people that were looking at buying Lancaster before the new people purchased it, and they didn't because of all the social media craziness that was going on, and it ruined the deal. Because everyone, and everything that they thought they're doing to help, they're really hurting. Right. And like I said, I've been guilty of this many times myself. I'm still guilty of it. Billy Putney is always on me about what I should say and shouldn't say, and I've gone too far, and I'm guilty of it myself, like I said. But sometimes you got to get on there and say stuff. Some people don't like it. Nobody's always going to like what you say. But I don't know. I don't know how you control it. I mean, I don't know how the tracks are trying to say you can't say anything. But you should be able to say something sometimes. But how do you police that? I mean, I don't know. I guess the best way is just say no. You can't say anything at all. But it got to a point where you had to say that. Yeah. Unfortunately. Yeah.
I mean, they're not the only track that has that policy. Ransomville had it, and then Merrittville had theirs. And what Merrittville said, and I thought that was pretty good. They said, look, we expect you to write stuff, but what we would like you to do before you put something damning about the track, talk to us first. Right. Just tell us first, and then at least we're aware of it, and maybe we can clear it up before it goes any further. I don't think there's any way you're going to be able to say, if you say anything bad about the track, you're down the road. We have few enough cars as it is. Right. Who are you going to throw out? I mean, you're not going to have any left. Right. So but the social media is not going anywhere, and we're just going to, if you generate enough good news in it, then it works.
Yeah, the tracks have to be understanding to the point where they have to talk to people though too. I mean, they have to be transparent about some things. You don't have to tell everybody everything, but they do have to talk to people. So. That policy works only if they acknowledge. You can't have a track that just completely ignores everybody and their opinions, and then tell them when you can't say anything. I think if they talk to people like Merrittville's, I think that would be better.
Okay, guys, we almost got to go to the break. One of the things, when I first got into this sport, the local fans, their heroes were Merv Treichler, Davey Moore, your dad, and I think that's Art. I mean, now their heroes are Jimmy Johnson, Okay, we're going to break.
Every year, 40% of all food in the U.S. never gets eaten.
40%. That's almost half the food we produce.
Food waste is a serious problem. It impacts all of us.
And it's expensive. Your family is throwing $1,500 a year in the trash.
We're working hard to put food waste on the chopping block.
And you can do the same at home.
Learn how to cook it, store it, and share it.
Just don't waste it.
Go to SaveTheFood.com.
So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice. And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
We couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Bye-bye. Hi. Hoping for a crisp breeze to help keep you alert. Oh, he took a sip of water too. That'll probably help. You were probably going to turn down the radio too, so you could focus, right?
Probably okay isn't okay.
Right.
If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend.
I think the water line is what really drove it home. I blew on him.
Open road, here comes the Heffley family.
Whether it's a short trip or a long haul.
Estimated time, 47 hours.
They will beg.
You're hungry? I'm happy to provide.
They will plead.
Deep fried butter on a stick.
But whatever you do, don't wimp out.
Now you're talking.
Make them buckle up.
He can't hurt.
Remember, safety first. Cheese curls second.
Are you orange?
Okay, we're back on the Sports Magazine, the Auto Racing edition for July. All the rainouts, guys. I can't believe we're into July already.
Yeah, it's six at Ransomville, or 5 or 6 at both them and Merrittville. These are dates you can't get back, and everybody has suffered. And each night that they are not open, that's one less night for the guys that build the cars, and also for trying to stay in business. So it's tough.
Scott, how's your season been going?
It's been up and down. We haven't had the finishes that I think that we've had that we've shown the speed for. We've had really good speed this year. Billy and I have worked together on the setup, and we've been trying some things to kind of get to that top 5 every week, and I think we've had the speed to do it. Lancaster, for the Old Boy Cup there a couple weeks ago on the Thursday night show at Lancaster, we had awesome race. We led pretty much until about lap 35 the whole race, and had some contact on a restart racing deal. I don't think it was anything intentional. Emmerling and I got together, and it turned me sideways in front of the field, and Andy kind of hit the left front and it broke, and we hit the wall. But it was frustrating, but at the same time it's positive. We did have a lot of really good speed. I mean, we had many restarts with Emmerling and Beers and all the top guys, and we were able to hold them off, and thought that we were pulling away a little bit there before that last caution.
Okay, now like the Old Boy Cup, 60 laps.
Yeah.
A much shorter race than you're used to running. Mm-hmm. Like at Chicago was 100 laps. What kind of a mindset do you have to do?
Well, you can go for it a little bit more. Those those races with those cars are all about saving tires and setting your car up to be able to do that. Being too good too soon usually doesn't work out at the end. You'll fade at the end. But with the 60 lapper, you can be a little bit more aggressive out of the box, and with the setup and your driving. And I thought we were pretty close. I mean, I thought that was our chance to win. Everything was looking good. We held them off on the restarts, and unfortunately, that's part of the racing game. You got to lose some before you can win them. But we're there.
We mentioned the Catalano family earlier. Doesn't that remind you of the Partridge family?
Well, they just seem to keep coming. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's more getting in cars now, and I think the last one's Troyer, but I'm sure he'll be at a big mod in 2 years or something. And I think he's already in one of the Smike Rod or something now, and the other younger one's getting in a sport mod. But they seem to just keep coming. But hey, it's it's another family in the sport, and more power to them if they can
Actually, they've been
afford
around
to
quite a
do
while.
it. Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
you got Buck and Patsy.
Oh yeah. I mean, they've been around since I remember the Catalano family back growing up as a kid, and
Spencer.
and all those guys, and
that's a real asset when you can get a group like that. And when they show up, they bring masses of people with them, and not only that, but it regenerates itself, and that's the best part of it.
Yeah.
We need that.
Okay, you guys were both at Chicasa this past week.
I was at the one last year, and that was a great ROC race. That at the end there with Patrick and Mike Leedy, and Andy was right there, and then this one with the three of you were right there the whole time. You wound up in fifth, and tell the people about that track. It's brand new. Had you raced it on you raced the old one, or no? You did.
Yeah, I did. I did in a couple.
You raced on the old one. Now you've had 2 races on the new one.
Well, it's a unbelievable facility. I mean, I don't even know how to describe it to people that haven't been there, other than it's basically a NASCAR track in a smaller version. I mean, they've spent upwards of $20 million rebuilding the place, from what we've heard. It's got all the LED lighting, full pit road, the catch fence. I mean, the whole deal. The track itself is awesome. Tons of grip, very fast. Especially in a modified. I was on the old configuration with the cup lights. I was on there last year in the modified race. I have crew chief for a couple races in the late models there with Taylor Holdaway. We've had some success there. But it's just an awesome facility. The people that run it are very nice. Alex Nagy and Kenny that owns it. They're just second to none. I mean, they're pulling out no stops. I mean, the nationals that they're putting on for the late model and the race and the purse that they vowed to put on over the next 5 years for those until I believe it's upwards of $500,000 to win. I mean, and the commitment that they're putting into that place is unreal. But I was surprised that we didn't have more cars for the purse that they had up for the ROC modified race. The facility. I understand the border can be tough, but we can't complain that we have nowhere to race and then not show up when we have these big races like this. We got to support them. We got to support the track. We got to support the ROC or whoever the sanctioning body is putting on those races. But I mean, what a facility. I mean, we had a good race. We started out. We had speed all day in practice. We were on older tires from last year's race, and I know some of the guys in front of us were on stickers, so I was pretty comfortable with our speeds after practice. We missed a stagger a little bit in time trials, but we still had a decent time trial run. Ended up second in the heat, redrew 12th, unfortunately. Had a pit for the air cleaner vibrated loose in a weird, just one of how the year's going, just a strange thing that never happens. Had a pit, tightened that back up, made some adjustments, got back up to 8th, I believe, and then they had the rain delay. And after the rain delay, the car just really came in. We were able to make some air pressure adjustments, and the car just was night and day different from the beginning of the race, and we were able to drive up through there. Wish we had another caution. I thought we had, we had the speed as same speed as leaders there at the end, and another lap. I think we probably would have had Chuck for 4th. But I'm just happy we've been progressing. It's only our second full year really in the tour mod, and I'm thankful that the Bookers.
You're not going back this year, right?
No, that's it for this year. Hopefully, I would love to have 2 races there next year.
I know there was talk about it because Lancaster, Spencer.
Yeah, we'll see. I would love to see it there, but we'll have to see what they do.
Well, I know that the guys put up $10,000 Canadian is still $7,500 or so US, which you don't race for that often.
Right.
I mean, so that and the fans are very appreciative. They're that group that was there. They're the old time fans. You can't get anybody to stand up and wave at their hats anymore. They won't do it. But these guys, they're up, they're waving, they're going nuts, and it wasn't Labatt's that was making them do it. They were doing it on their own. So it was really, it's nice to see that. The border, that is a problem. There's no question about it.
It is. There's maybe some of these drivers don't have a crew that they can take over. They can't get over.
I wonder if there is some kind of an accommodation that you can get. This might be something to look into. A temporary thing where, look, we're only going to be going over there 2 or 3 times. We're going there to race. Is there some kind of a certificate like an entertainment thing, where people come in from Hollywood to shoot a movie?
Yeah,
I mean,
there is.
they don't have credentials, so that might be something to investigate. But the good news is that you're right. The facility is beautiful. The track is great. You guys love it, and you've had 2 great races over there. So that really is good. Speaking of great races, we haven't had one yet. The last great race at Holland Speedway was last year. It played to an empty house, and we're going to talk about the elephant in the room now. We haven't gotten to it, but you're as close to it as we could. Larry Ott wrote an article. It was in today's news. He was invited out to Holland Speedway by Ron Bennett to show the progress that was going on. And everyone knows the drama. We've gone through it. We've reported on what we know. You were there. You can take us right from the beginning and tell us how this whole thing, what went on and what led to where we are now.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's a frustrating story for sure. I met Daniel Hutchinson at the banquet prior to last year when he was introduced as someone that was going to be getting involved with the Speedway. I went in and talked to him. I mean, to be quite frank, he was just an odd guy. I didn't understand the direction of the things he was talking about. He said he had a problem with my family right off the bat for something that I don't even recall. We were supposed to help him when he was purchasing a Cup Light and work with him at the racetrack, and my father and I both had no recollection of what he was talking about. He then was very upset about Tim Bennett, that he had gotten fired over text message. I don't know what year that was, but he worked in the tech barn with the 4 cylinders at one point and got thrown out of there, and that was kind of how we started the conversation. From there, I thought we were going to have something to do with the racetrack, and he was calling me in to talk about that. We started talking about the speed shop that I have now. We were going to be partners in that. He said he was going to give me $10,000 to $15,000 to build up inventory, get a bank account, have the lawyers get a hold of me, and figure out who owns what and all this, and all sounded great, but none of it ever happened. I mean, he opened a bank account with 5 cents in it. I had worked out terms with some of the vendors and built everything up from there to where we are today. Just to share this with everybody, just because I think it needs to be exposed of who this guy is and what he's done to Holland and the Bennett family. His wife was caught trying to steal the money out of the Speed Shop bank account, who worked at the bank. She was fired from the bank. The police talked to her. Unfortunately, the bank found it, thankfully, and notified me and locked up the money. And she, was fired. I don't know what happened from there, but they didn't actually get any money out, but they tried, and it just shows to the kind of people that they are. And they've done the same thing to the Bennett family. I mean, he said from the beginning that he owned it. Then he told me that it was a lease to buy, but the money was in escrow, and they're just waiting on the DEC to sign off on the land. That was the next story. And then all the money would be released, and then you get into the season and you start seeing all this stuff change, and none of it made sense. I'm not a successful business owner. I've only been in business for a year, but and anybody with just any basic intelligence would say that this doesn't make any sense of the order of operation that he's doing things. I mean, he just started dismantling the place from the minute he got in there. He could care less if anyone was in the stands. I mean, we've talked about this, you and I, about the odd remarks where, he's happy if there's 200 people in the stands and 10 cars in every class. And I just don't, that makes no logical sense to me. But he started taking down everything in the pits. He took down the fences. He took down the bushes in between, there were the shrubs in between the pit stalls. Next was all the trees started coming down. We showed up one day and 300 trees are cut down. Then all of a sudden some of the electrical lines were taken down. Half the pool was taken down on the stand side. Then we come in the next week and the concession stands are taken down. 3 of the concession stands, and not cleaned up. I mean, just taken down and left there, and people are coming into this. And the one week he put electrical tape around a pole that was half there, half in the air, held up by electrical lines. I mean, he gave no regard to any sort of help that anyone tried to give him. I mean, he claimed in a news article that the Bennett family didn't give him any sort of paperwork or anything to go off of, and no help, and that's just a lie. That's just boldly a lie. Ron Bennett gave him every single piece of paperwork that went with that racetrack, who to call for sponsors, how much food to order, all the deals that went in place, how to do everything procedurally on the race side of things, and he completely disregarded any of it. And just from a family that's been at the racetrack, at Holland Speedway especially, and my grandfather being one of the first people to race at that racetrack, it's appalling what he's done to that family, and the disrespect that he showed Mr. Bennett and their entire family. And I just don't understand. He didn't pay anybody. I mean, he wasn't paying anyone, and that's public knowledge. And of what we've learned. I mean, he didn't pay the sign guy from Streamline. I know there's a lawsuit against him for that. He didn't pay the tree guy for all the stuff that he cut down. He didn't pay any of the vendors at the end of the year, past the first or second week. I mean, there's just it just goes on and on. I mean, he didn't pay the Bennetts anything. I just can't believe that. And he snowed everybody with this bank account that I believe was the grant money that the company, the 3D printing company that he has, was given earlier in the year. I think they were given $7 million. That's public knowledge. Anybody can look that up. They were given a grant, and I think they showed the bank account that he could not personally touch. But when they vetted out, it looks great. Well, of course, it looks great on paper when there's $4 or $5 million sitting in a bank account, and you say you can use it. So I don't blame Mr. Bennett for he was at the end of his career. He's put his time and plenty of sweat equity and everything else into that racetrack and built it from the ground up. And I think he thought this was his ticket out, and understandably so. And I think he just kind of let some things go that he probably wouldn't have in his earlier days, as far as the deal and the lease to own and how that was all structured and what he let go as far as not getting paid. So it's frustrating that somebody would take advantage of that situation, and it just doesn't logically make sense other than the fact he just wanted to dismantle the place. I mean, anybody that was in business to improve that place or take that over as an investment surely would not do what he was doing. So I don't know what he was doing. I have no clue as far as to speak to what his ideas were, other than he just purposely wanted to destroy the place.
The closest he came on his appearance on our show, when we asked him, and we did, we said, well, what do you envision this? And he envisioned it as essentially Darien Lake South. He was going to, in fact, just recently, the paintball is ready to go, and people are saying, what? What, at Holland Speedway? So, but when we asked him pointedly, do you own the place? He danced around that. He wouldn't use the word own. He never got to lease to own. We found that out later. It's laughable now, but anybody who saw the show, and when I asked him, do you have a staff? And he said, yes. I said, who's your general manager? And his answer was, if I knew you were going to ask that, I'd have brought my list. That told us a lot. Then we got to some specific things. We found out he didn't know classes of race cars. Now you're buying a racetrack, but I think the most telling answer that we got was, all right, you've got this 100 whatever, how many acres, and you've got this complex. How much of that would you dedicate to racing? His answer was 25%. He's on a racing show trying to drum up trade for racing, and he says, I'm going to commit 25% of the money, and that didn't ring true. And then, but he did say, it was funny because he didn't say anything about a lease, but he did say he had a 5-year commitment. Did you hear about the 5-year commitments?
Yeah, he says a lot. He said a lot of things. It changed every time you talk to the guy, and that's where I started seeing that in the speed shop when I was working and partners with him. It just stuff started slowly building that didn't add up, and then the lies started building up, and you catch him in one lie, and it just, like I said, it was frustrating. It didn't make sense. I don't understand. He lied about everything. Everything that I've ever talked about, he lied. He said he was a 2-time Navy Sailor of the Year. He looked that up online, which is public knowledge also, and was on his website that he was. And, I called him out on it. I mean, that's not something that you lie about for sure. So we call him out on it. Now it's no longer on his website. He takes it off after he gets called out on it. But, I just don't understand the arrogance or what his mindset is of lying about stuff like that, especially, maybe it was just his ignorance to the racing world, but everybody talks, whether we all like each other or not, or at times we disagree with each other. We're all one big family at the end of the day in the racing world, and everyone's going to talk. And once you screw over one person, or stuff
gets out.
Yeah, it gets out in a hurry. I mean,
it doesn't take long.
And especially if I was new, I would especially want to make the media on my side, and he did nothing but keep you guys beyond arm's length.
Well, every time he got a phone call, every time Larry Ott tried to call him, he had to dance for 2 weeks before he'd finally get an audience. Oh, I can meet you in person. Oh, no, we'll do it on the phone. Oh, we're going to do it Tuesday. No, we're going to do it Friday. And by the time you got there, you forgot what you were going to ask him.
Yeah.
But it was the evasiveness, I think, and the fact that, well, the strangest thing, and I don't know if I mentioned this on the air or not, but one of the great races, the ROC races last year was the race at Holland. And as we were leaving, we crossed the track and we ran into him, and I said to him, "How did you like the race?" And he said, "I never saw it." I said, "You didn't even see it?" I said, "Where were you?" And he was buried in the office or something. He never even saw the best race that was ever there. The whole thing, the whole send-off, he said on right here that it was 2 weeks or a week before opening night. We said to him, "Have you had any practice?" We had one. It was invitation only, and I almost died. I said, "Okay." I wanted to go and say, who did you invite, and why was it invited? You want graphs of cars? Who went? Were you invited?
No actual competitors.
No, you wouldn't have been.
At the time we weren't too bad at that point, but
So what was that all about?
He took out a TQ for himself that he wrecked in 2 laps. And then he also, I had fixed the ride to drive car for him. They were out messing around with that. They blew that up. So I don't think any actual competitors were there. I don't know of any that were up there. Maybe a select few that lived around there, but other than that, I didn't hear of anybody. But the way everything was handled there was crazy. He came after my father and then said that my father assaulted him during the one night out of nowhere. My dad wasn't even talking to anybody. He was just standing by the fence, and Daniel come over and pushed him, and that turned into a mess. And then banned my father from life from a racetrack that our family helped build, basically,
right.
and was a legend at. And it just, the whole thing became so over the top. Comical that all you could do was laugh, because anybody that had any interaction with the guy left scratching their head and said words that I probably can't say on here.
Probably
about they have no clue. You're more confused after you talk to the guy than you were when you started. So
after that first,
but that's what he wants.
Well, I think it is what he wants.
He tried to, because by the time we were finished, after an hour with him, we were scratching our heads when we left. I mean, and then you go to the banquet. We find out that he signed up for a place, but he never paid any down payment. When they showed up for it, they said, "What are you doing here?" Or they said, "Well, we're going to be there." Well, you're what? We don't have any date. There's no money. The same thing happened for the registration party. That caused Dominici, to one of the few guys that he had that knew anything about racing. He wound up quitting in a huff. Then we get reports of a general manager being hired that never was. And all of it had to emanate from him. And you just wonder if this was just a big plaything for him. And the sad thing was the victims are the countryside is littered with the victims, and it didn't seem to affect them at all. And this is a matter of public record too. He owed money and still does, to numerous vendors. Mm-hmm. I told people on the air about Paul Small, who was his PR guy and announcer. He had to literally go online and say, "I don't want anything to do with this guy anymore." He wouldn't answer phone calls. He finally got paid, but it was way after the fact, and numerous other people haven't been. I heard a rumor, and it's strictly a rumor, that he never paid the NASCAR fee. That's true. Bennett.
That's true.
Ron Bennett paid for that. He said, "Oh yeah, I'll have it in a few days or whatever," and it sounded like a scam from the start, which is sad. But it all emanated from this promissory account, which showed millions of dollars, which anybody in their right mind would say, well, it's there, I see it, and it wasn't there.
Well, you don't
Well,
anticipate.
guys, I think it probably isn't going to happen this year, but I think we'll have oval track racing there next year. Maybe a part-time schedule, kind of like, you know.
So
yeah, I agree.
When we get past this, and there's no question, if you read that article from Larry, Gordon Becker and Ron Bennett are dedicated to resurrecting the place. Will it ever be its former? I don't think, as we said, I don't think anybody will. But if anybody can do it, these two guys have. The problem is that there's a long way to go. As you mentioned, all of the things that were done. And again, I don't know how a lessee can do that. I don't know how a lessee could make major physical alterations to the facility. But regardless of whether he did or not, we're now at that. We're at the bottom, and we go up from here. And they dedicated the future. Right now, there is one thing on the schedule. It's a Crash Ram in September. If there is any way possible after that to maybe get a race in there, I mean, you know, you've raced on it. Your father was a star there. It's a great racetrack.
Oh, yeah.
It's a unique racetrack. When they say the high banks at Holland, they're not kidding. And if they can make it happen, and by reading, I'm convinced they will. Now we have a chance with the guys over at Lancaster, with Vito and Mickey, and if Ron has to run it or hire somebody to run it. Now we know that it's going to be an abbreviated schedule. We know neither of them can run every Saturday night. Lesser is better in this frame of mind. If they can do a lot of cooperative stuff if they want to. So I appreciate you filling it in and filling in the gaps for anybody who wondered what was going on.
You said it, and we can't get Lancaster out of our heads, but that's okay. Guys, we are almost done. Okay, our next show, I got it written down here. Next month, August 16th, okay? Don't forget, we'll have another guest on. Dave Sully, Scott Wylie, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Scott, it was very enlightening. I appreciate you coming. Your experience is wide. You filled in an awful lot of gaps tonight. We really appreciate you being here. And now that people have gotten a little bit of an insight, maybe they understand a little bit more about Holland, and there's nowhere else to go but up. And they're going to need your support, all of you former Holland fans. The drivers will be there. I know, Scott, you will be, and you guys, all you need is something to build on. So we're going to hope for the best.
The one you heard for a long time, one race there this year. The one race I would have liked to have seen is the modified.
Yep, that race last year was a dandy. Well, keep our fingers crossed. That door is not slammed shut yet. It's ajar a little bit. I don't think and don't know if it's going to happen. If it doesn't, we'll do it next year.
Okay, we're all done.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you next month.